Hey everyone, I'm making this video to answer the many questions I'm getting regarding Ardex 8+9, RedGard and Schluter. The question is, do these waterproofing products work? Now you might be thinking, why? These are all major companies with long-term warranties, and I haven't heard anything about class action lawsuits or clients complaining about leaking showers. So what's going on? Most, if not all of the questions I've been getting are coming from a YouTube channel where an individual is testing products on his own. Now, I'm actually in support of people thinking for themselves, looking into products, techniques, and trying to better the industry. My channel is about that very thing. And this person is a licensed professional tile contractor with many years of experience. So what's the issue? Let me start by saying this isn't about the individual. It's about clearing up the questions, looking at the products, and going over proper testing methods. To clear up the questions, we'll have to show real examples from the tests, examine procedures, and go over conclusions to understand what is happening. Since this all began with Schluter Kirti, let's start there. If you watched my channel, you've probably seen my two Schluter Kirti videos. One is a 7-day test with a drain, and the other is a 50-day box test. I built both out of a cardboard box so you could easily detect a leak. I also tested the box to see how fast the water would penetrate without the membrane and with a small slit in the Kirti. Both tests showed a leak right away. Then I mixed the Thinset according to manufacturer's instructions. Another very, very important step, which is frequently missed even among professionals, is to key in the Thinset and the membrane. Ensuring the membrane is thoroughly embedded is critical to the installation. Here's a section from my Kirti video where I talk about keying in the Thinset and the installation of the Kirti. Now it's time to install the Kirti. Starting with the preformed corners. It's very important to key in the mortar. This means to press the Thinset in with the flat part of your trowel. This ensures a mechanical bond with the substrate. Then use the notch side of the trowel to set the thickness. I put the corners in first, then the vertical banding, then the horizontal banding, next the walls, and last the floor. You'll notice the horizontal banding doesn't go all the way to the corner. That's because the preformed corners are designed to get a 2-inch overlap before the corner, so there is less buildup. Next, I deconstructed the box, calibrated the moisture meter, and checked the cardboard joints. The meter showed the same reading on the outside as the inside after a 7-day flood test. All we are concerned with is that water does not wet the substrate. How far in water might wick is irrelevant if it doesn't make it to the substrate or cause any moisture issues. Now let's look at the failed Kirti test. I was not present at the installation, so all we have to go on is the video. But there are definitely some major concerns. Starting with the Thinset. You can see it's very wet. This is a real issue. The viscosity of the Thinset is critical, and like any cementitious product, the water to cement ratio is one of the most important factors. Here's a Schluter video showing the proper mix, and you can see a big difference. Next, you can see the Thinset was not keyed in on the floor or walls. Only the notch was used. Here are the instructions from Schluter.
Apply a thin layer of mortar to the wall with the flat side of the trowel to produce solid contact with the surface.
Then the coverage was checked on the floor and accepted as good. But you can clearly see this whole area is just wet, with no real Thinset attached to the membrane. And trowel lines still exist on the floor and Kirti. This is not good coverage and an indicator that the Thinset is too wet. You can also see when keying in the membrane, virtually no Thinset is being pushed out on the floor or the walls. This is very unusual. Here's a section from a Schluter video, and you can clearly see the Thinset being pressed out the sides. This is what happens when you have the right Thinset consistency. Next comes the corners. You can see on the first two corners, they were not keyed in properly. Then after the other two corners were completed, he went back to the first corners and keyed them in. You need to do all steps on each piece at once and not let the Thinset set up too much. This same pattern and lack of properly keying in the membrane was continued on the rest of the build, along with an improper mix. Let's move to the deconstruction after a 7-day flood test. The first spot was found under the center crease of a preformed corner. This is a common issue when the thinset is too wet, preventing it from being able to hold the membrane down, especially if there is a crease or some deformation. The only spot they claim to have leaked all the way through was in this small wall-to-floor connection, and there wasn't a visible trail of water to that spot. The hypothesis they're using, and mentioned several times in multiple videos, is that thinset is porous and wicks the water in. So if you use thinset, it will fail. To make something clear, thinset is a generic, non-technical name referring to dry set or modified Portland cement mortar, generally tested under ANSI 118.1 and 118.4. That would make Ardex 8+9 a thinset, which doesn't wick water and is waterproof. So it's really important to be specific when making claims. Not to mention, almost every manufacturer's thinsets are different and have different properties under different circumstances. Now, if we assume that all thinsets wick water no matter what the method, you would expect to see water wicked relatively even everywhere. But in all his assembly tests, even the glass box, it always came in spots, and as the test progressed, the spots got bigger. But we didn't see an even wicking of water everywhere. This would seem to indicate isolated areas of failure rather than an entire system failure. Given what we've seen so far with the installation, my guess would be operator error. Let's move on to the Ardex 8+9. This is a cementitious polymer modified waterproofing. After watching his YouTube videos, it seems the advertised method is to use Schluter Kirti, then Ardex over top. Now, the underlining message of doing a better job and redundancy in your waterproofing application makes sense. And if you can guarantee a better product and warranty to your client, why not? So the question is, does this method do that? Let's start with the warranty. Schluter offers a limited lifetime warranty when using their complete system. Ardex offers a System 1 25-year warranty when using their products. If you put both of these products together, you will get 0 warranty and probably not a lot of assistance from either manufacturer. Now, you might be thinking companies don't stand by their warranties anyways, but right now that's just a thought. If you mix the systems, it's a guarantee. Something else that doesn't totally add up is both the Kirti and the Ardex 8+9 failed in his testing. So what's being suggested is placing 2 failed systems together to get a workable system that has no warranty. Now, I've already shown you 2 Kirti tests that worked, and I'm about to show you why his Ardex 8+9 test failed. But this doesn't mean that both of these systems together would or wouldn't work. It means that neither manufacturer has thoroughly tested it and aren't willing to stand by it with their warranties. Not to mention, they both produce quality waterproofing systems which they warranty and don't need to mix with other systems. So let's take a look at why the Ardex 8+9 test failed. The test was recently done and showed many spots of water intrusion. Now, it's been more than a year since he showed Ardex 8+9 as his preferred method. And the reason I bring that up is important. He states in the video this.
So one thing right off the bat is that you don't have to be as exact with the ratios.
Now remember, this is not about bashing or judging him, but uncovering the facts. And this is very important to understand what is going on. Now, if you've used Ardex 8+9 and read the bag or the technical instructions from their site, you know it's very specific on the amount of liquid to use. Even the nap size of the roller is specified. So saying you don't have to be as exact with the ratios is very troubling. And with everything else we've seen so far, there's a strong indication that following the manufacturer's instructions is not the standard procedure. Now, a common concept among tiling, concrete, and masonry professionals is you must be aware of your substrate, making sure it does not absorb too much moisture out of your material, which can affect the performance. The pinhole leaking you see here is a common known effect if the substrate sucks out too much moisture. It will leave pinholes in the material and you'll get water spots coming through. Ardex mentions wetting down the substrate if it is very dry, and Ultraflex RS is very dry. One other note to mention is the product must be thoroughly mixed before applying. Having clumps in your mix and mixing them on the surface is not an acceptable practice. Now, before I show you the clear box test with half Ardex and RedGard, let's go over some RedGard points. There hasn't actually been a successful RedGard test yet on the channel. In the first video, the product was installed way too thick and cracked. Again, the instructions were not followed. They did read them, but did not follow them. In the video, he states having used RedGard a couple times before, but not following the instructions.
We've used it to just lightly apply a roller over a surface. We haven't ever actually followed the instructions.
Now, this really seems to be the reoccurring theme behind these tests. So here's the 48-hour flood test I did in a clear box using Ultraflex RS as the base, just like he used. Half the box is Ardex 8+9, the other half is RedGard. I installed the products according to manufacturer's instructions, ensuring I mixed the material properly, prepped the substrate accordingly, keyed the material in for proper adhesion, applied the correct amount, and ensured proper drying before recoating. Note that both Ardex 8+9 and RedGard require mesh to be placed in the corners for proper installation. I left out the mesh to show it is not the reason for the failures, and you can see after 48 hours, no leaks. So what does all this mean? I think the biggest thing we can learn from this is it doesn't matter if you're a homeowner, DIYer, or professional. You need to understand and follow manufacturer's instructions. I hope this helps clear up any confusion and gives you some insight and confidence on using these products. If you do encounter a problem, then you should immediately contact the manufacturer and document the issues. All the testing I do, I'm always trying to be in contact with the manufacturers no matter what happens. I've even had arguments and issues with manufacturers, but I always allow them to participate and provide information. When you cut out the manufacturers from your testing and don't follow their procedures, you get mixed results and spread confusion because there are too many variables to know what went wrong. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned as I'll be making videos on how to properly install each of these products. Also, hit those like and subscribe buttons before you go, and I'll see you next time.